Chairperson, we're ready when you are.
Okay, now it is 6 p.m. We'll call to order this Planning Commission meeting of April 13th, 2022. Can we get a roll call vote, please? Or roll call attendance?
I apologize, Chair. We aren't able to hear you. Give me one moment.
I can hear you, Nico.
I can hear you too.
Okay, can you hear me now, Vanessa?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it is 6 p.m. We'll go ahead and call to order our Planning Commission meeting for the date of April 13th, 2022. Can we please get a roll call for attendance?
Commissioner Valdez,
Here.
Commissioner Franz,
Present.
Chairperson Isiano,
Present.
and Commissioner Lopez and Vice Chair Rodriguez Ceja are absent.
Okay. Commissioner Franz, would you be so kind as to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. Vanessa, are we going to have a flag come up or we're just going to, there we go. Okay. Place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Franz. Vanessa, do we have anybody present either online or in chambers who would like to give any public comments for items not on the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, being that there are none, let's go ahead and start with our study session items. Item 4.1 is a project consultation for Wendy's drive-thru.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. As we wait for the PowerPoint to be loaded, I just want to remind the Commission and those in attendance that this is a project consultation. Project consultations are an informal meeting opportunity between applicants and the Commission to discuss a potential project. No decisions are to be made. The comments are non-binding, and this is not a public hearing format, although public comments can be provided by interested parties. There we go. Okay. So this evening, our first project consultation is regarding a proposed Wendy's drive-thru restaurant on Highway 111. Let's see, there we go. So the location of this proposed restaurant, fast food restaurant, is along Highway 111. It is a component of what's often called town and country. This is a older commercial development, and the address is 81703. And as a single APN of 616-101-003. The general plan designation is mixed use neighborhood, and the current zoning is community commercial. So this is the conceptual site plan that the applicant has submitted. The site plan shows a new building with drive-through facilities in an approximate north-south orientation. To the north is Highway 111, and on either side, east and west, is existing commercial development, and then to the south is also existing commercial development. This is a before and after, if you will. The picture at the top shows the existing buildings that would be removed if this project was to go forward. You can see that the applicant is proposing a new Wendy's drive-through restaurant, and it is a modern contemporary design. In the cover memo that I provided to the Commission, I did highlight two potential issue areas for the Commission to discuss with the applicant. One is the drive-through component itself. Lately, the Commission, in discussions of projects that are including drive-through components, has pushed for more integrated architectural design of the drive-through facilities to the building. So in early conversations with the applicant, I have recommended that they look at extending the canopy north and south and potentially integrating a pony wall or some other design feature on the eastern edge of the drive-through facilities. I also highlighted the fact that perhaps more intensive landscaping on the east and west perimeters of the project could be provided. And then a potential concern area based on the approximate north-south orientation of the building is the potential for headlight glare onto Highway 111. And so these are issue areas that I've highlighted for the commission. I know the applicant's representatives and the applicant are in attendance virtually this evening, and they're going to want to present on their project to you. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission might have before the chair invites the applicant to speak.
I have a quick question, if that's okay. Kevin, on this, go back to the picture with the before and after that we just had up. There you go. Is this going to take out both these buildings or just the one in the front?
That's a great question, Commissioner. Both buildings.
So the 2-story in the back and the single-story in the front would both be gone.
That is correct.
Okay, and that is mostly what right now? Just office space?
Yeah, it's a combination of, mostly office space, small tenant office space. I drove by, there's a number of vacancies in both buildings, but it is a variety of small tenant office space.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to confirm.
Kevin, I have a quick question in regards to the north-south orientation and the drive-through. You're concerned with the lights. Are the other drive-throughs actually on both sides of Highway 111 within that Highway 111 corridor? Are they all kind of orientated the same way, like the Burger King and the KFC, just a couple lots down from there? Are those also north and south orientated, I believe?
Some are and some aren't. For example, the new Dutch Brothers that went in 2021, that housed the building close to the street, and the drive-through facilities on the rear of the project, so you don't get that headlight glare. But yes, Chair, I think the majority of fast food restaurants with drive-throughs are oriented towards Highway 111. That is not necessarily an issue that would in any way imperil any decision making, but it is a highlighted issue in terms of the potential for glare. There is a limited ability for correcting that other than to change the orientation of the building from north to south to east to west. And that would be one way to address that, but the site itself may not make that design modification as easy as it might be because of the constraints of the site size.
Yeah, I'm noticing it's kind of a long and deep lot. It would be hard to kind of orientate everything going east-west, so to speak. All right, thank you. That was my question.
So at this time, Chair, if you would like, you can certainly invite the applicant's representatives and/or the applicant to. They are participating virtually this evening to present their thoughts and ideas to you. Again, this is an informal meeting opportunity, so the commission is certainly entitled to ask questions as they go through the presentation and discussion with you. It's intended to be a give and take. Okay,
unless Commissioner Valdez has any questions for staff, then we'll go ahead and hear from the applicant.
One quick question, just because I noticed on a lot of the new, restaurants or drive-throughs that come up, sometimes the orientation, the way that the cars are getting in line for the drive-through, it interferes with people driving through the parking lot or through the shopping center. So how will the cars be driving into the parking structure to get in through the drive-through? Because I've seen accidents and people honking at each other and chaos at some locations. So I just want to make sure that we are mindful of that.
Commissioner, that's a great question. As you can see from the conceptual design, primary access to the drive-through facilities would be through the proposed parking area. So you would have dual movements going on, those that are parking, both entering a parking stall and exiting a parking stall, versus those that are intending to drive through that parking area to get to the drive-through facility. On larger sites, you might see those more separated, but because of the narrowness and the overall size of this property, they would have to travel in a shared drive aisle.
And do we know about how many cars until it starts? How many cars would be in line before the cars would start curving out into the parking lot?
It's a great question. I'm going to defer that to the applicant's representative, who can perhaps expand upon that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your questions, Commissioner Valdez. Yeah, let's go ahead and hear from the applicant, please.
Good evening. This is Ralph Tepish, the applicant representing Sage Invesco, and we also have the site architect, on virtual, as well as Rich from on the planning side that have supported us, as you know, Kevin, going forward. I'm going to defer to John, the architect, to talk about the design and how we've incorporated some of the suggestions, as Kevin's alluded to. A couple of comments as it relates to some of the, a couple of responses as it relates to some of the comments. One, at this point in time, we show basically, it looks like a 12-car stack before the car stacking gets into quote unquote the parking area of the property. That is a little bit more than I think the standard allows for, but that's the number that we show here at 12. As it relates to the egress and ingress, yes, most of it is off Highway 11. There is a ability to enter the site in the rear. That open area is a kind of a pathway, quote unquote, to the south. If you look at this picture down at the bottom, there's some ways to egress and ingress as well, but predominantly it is off of Highway 111. And as it relates to going back through the driveway, the drive-through, the distance is such that we believe that the glare in the evening is minimal. But yes, most of the sites that I looked at through Google Map are typical of this design. It's not common to, as the Dutch Bros was different, and I agree too with Kevin. That's a project actually we developed a few years ago. But most of them are in this fashion. To go reorient the building, I think does have some constraints and probably be even more of a concern as far as traffic, the car lights and so forth as you leave, if you were more orienting to another 90 degrees parallel on the highway. As far as landscape and enhanced landscape, that's all we will incorporate that as well. But I'm available, John, if you're, I know you're here, if you want to add a little bit about the architecture, about what we've been doing, working with Kevin back and forth to accommodate his requests that we can do and would be willing to do, of course.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You're muted.
Okay, my name is John Dodson. I'm with R.M. Davis New Architects. We're located in Santa Monica, California. Briefly, I'd just like to explain the thinking behind the layout of the site. We put the building in the north-south orientation for a couple of reasons. One is to allow for the longest drive-through queue. We have 12 spaces with a wide drive-through. Typically, we've done queuing studies, and we don't need more than typically 6 to 8 cars in the stack. So this would exceed what we would need even at peak times. And it is a 12-car stack to the drive-through lane, but if you look at the drawing there, you can see that another car could come out and still not block any of the parking. That's how it's been designed. Furthermore, there's a cross-access easement between us and the building at the bottom of the site. So cars could come around and don't need to go into the parking lot at all for get access to the drive-through lane. The other reason to orient the building this way is so that the front of the building faces the street and the back of the building faces the back of the site. If we were to try and angle it or run it parallel to Highway 111, you'd end up seeing the back of the building as you're coming down Highway 111. Furthermore, one of the other goals, or at least what planning had stated that they wanted, was not the drive-through to be visible along the street. And in this orientation, it doesn't do that. The drive-through is not up against the street. The front of the building is. And we have provided pedestrian access to the building that doesn't have to cross the drive-through lane. So there's no, in this layout that we've got, we don't have any conflict between pedestrians and the drive-through lane, which is a goal that we typically have. We have, if we go to the 3D rendering, we do provide for a trellis. We can extend that and make it more continuous between the two. We would also use a small 3-foot wall, or a pony wall, as it's called, for the full length of the drive-through lane, and we would clad that in the stone veneer that's at the wainscot of the building, so there's consistency in the design. And with respect to the comments on landscaping, yes, we can tweak the site and come up with more landscaping. That's not an issue. So I think that's about it. This is just so you know, this is the newest prototype from Wendy's. We at Cottage Foods has enhanced the design. One is raising the back of the house, so none of the air conditioning units are visible, which is for some reason not what Wendy's corporate does. And then we've added some, it doesn't show on this elevation, but on the rear, on the front elevation facing the parking lot, some relief to the elevation with pilasters and stone veneer, so that the building's a little, it's just a little nicer looking than the typical prototype, because that's what we do. And that's about all I have to say. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
If there's any questions for the applicant by any commissioners, feel free.
Just for a little clarification. So the front of the building is the picture that you're showing us here. So when people are driving in to Wendy's to get into the drive-through, it's not near the exit for to drive into Highway 111. It's towards the back of the building, correct?
To get to the drive-through lane.
Yes, to get to the drive-through lane, is it?
Mhm.
Because I'm looking at it, the top part, is that 111 there? And then
The top part's 111, correct?
Okay. Okay.
So if you
Correct.
go back to that elevation, you would be standing, looking towards, that you would be looking, and that's the exit of the drive-through that the car is coming out. And then the cars parked in front, you can see there's like a truck there. That's the front of the building.
Okay. So when you're driving in from 111, there should be some kind of signage or something to guide the cars to drive around the parking lot and go into the driveway lane.
Correct. We have, Wendy's has, we have
Directionals.
directional signs throughout the site.
Okay, that's good, because I've seen some places that don't have that and it's complete chaos when there's, more than a few cars driving in, trying to get in line, and we just want to make sure that's nicely structured.
Yeah,
Okay,
no, this is a very expensive and very beautiful building that we build.
it is.
It's much prettier than what corporate expectation is. I'm the VP of real estate for Cottage Foods. I can tell you that the owner of the company, Peter Capriati, pays anywhere between $300,000 and $400,000 more in the building than what corporate expects. So he builds a really beautiful building, and his operations are amazing. This would be a great asset. All the other stores in the valley are ours as well, but those were all the old aesthetic. This is the new aesthetic. It's very clean. It's very beautiful. It's just a very nice dining experience, honestly.
No, I love it. And another question, I don't know if this would be a question for this meeting, or we're going to have another meeting when it comes to design. Is this the color that the building's going to be, or is that going to change?
John, you want to speak to?
I can speak to that. This is the standard. It's a little, the resolution makes it a little hard to tell, but these are the standard colors that we typically use. But the red is a critical element for that blade element, because that's part of their brand identity. But the overall color of the building, if we have to center match or other issues such as that, we've been able to do that.
Thank you.
What we'll be able to do for you, Commissioner and Chairperson, if you want, we could send you some better resolution images, and you could see the different color schemes, and you could see what you would like. It's going to be, if this gets approved, it's going to be a massive improvement, I think, as far as curb appeal, because the existing facility right now is pretty tired and very vacant. So
I agree. Thank you.
Chairperson, I have a couple of questions.
Please.
First of all, I agree this will be a significant improvement to that site. So I'm very happy with it. A couple of questions that I have is, I don't see outdoor seating, and you know that 7 months out of the year, the weather's pretty good, right? Did I miss it, or is it something that's going to be incorporated?
We do have a patio up front. Just given the size of the site, I didn't draw on the patio furniture, but right at the front as you enter the building. At the front area, you see that's the 2 rectangles in front of the building. That's actually a patio.
So that will be outdoor seating. I'm assuming there'll be some type of shade structure.
We can study that. Yes, we've just completed a project where we did have a shade structure over it. And that's it has elements from the building. So yes, that's
Okay.
I will add if I may, on that topic. We tend not to like structures because the homeless people do tend to make it a shelter. So it won't be a structure per se, right? It'll be open, maybe with lattice and then umbrellas to where it looks very inviting, but it's not going to become a permanent abode for somebody.
Perfect. No, that makes perfect sense. It's just some areas, a little shade goes a long way, right? In the desert.
Absolutely. Yes.
So that's great. Okay, so that's good.
Thank you.
I was really happy to see that you guys mentioned the fact that there really is no backup house, right? With the way this building is set up, so that you are taking into account the air conditioners and basically the whole 365 view of the building. So that I was very happy to hear that. The 12 space stacking was really good as well. Let me see what else that I have. Yeah, I mean, I think the colors are good. I mean, it'd be good definitely to get a better, maybe like a color board. Colors are so hard to see depending on what your computer screen is set up, right?
Right.
So that would be very good. I completely understand the red, that's the Wendy's trademark. And the pony wall is very important. The one thing, this is a very big lot, right? I think it's 41,000 square feet overall, and this is only going to cover 7% of the site. So I do think that taking a serious look at the landscape and making sure that it is heavy enough, but still, of course, is drought tolerant, water conservation, all of that kind of thing is still taken into account. But other than that, I think you guys, it's a very nice looking building. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Franz. It's a very nice looking building. I look forward to hopefully seeing something brought to life on that side of the street. So many things are closing down on that side of the street, or going out of business, or just tenancy is lean. Quick question in regards to deliveries. I don't really see a large area for like a truck to park when they make their deliveries. Will they be loading in from like the far south end, the back end of the parking lot beyond the drive-through? Or will they be parking closer to the building, taking up a lot of those parking spots to make their deliveries?
Deliveries typically occur when the building's not open. So the truck would park in the middle of the parking lot, and because that's where the service door is at the rear, and there's a service ramp there. So, but we don't get deliveries during business hours, so it won't be blocking anyone except for people who work there.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, Kevin, if there's no more questions for the applicant, I guess you'll be getting back together with the applicant and kind of reviewing some of those suggestions, and sounds like they're open to taking considerations on some of the items you noted. And I'm guessing we can look forward to maybe seeing a design presentation at some point.
Yes, Chair. So procedurally, this is a project consultation. The applicant, if they decide to proceed forward based on the current zoning, they would be subject to a conditional use permit and design review hearing process. These would be public hearings. They would have to make the formal submittal, pay all appropriate fees, and then we would process them. I would just note for the record that this site is also within the boundaries of the proposed Highway 111 corridor specific plan that the commission will be reviewing later this year and making recommendations to the city council. At this time, we're still developing the plan, but I think you can expect that any drive-through facilities, this issue of enhanced architectural integration will be something that we'll be discussing with the planning commission in terms of any recommendations you might want to make. But that is later this year, later this calendar year. And so I wouldn't anticipate that we'd be talking with the commission in earnest until probably early fall. So if the applicant does make submittal prior to that and has a vested and complete application, that would be processed under the rules in effect at that time.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for staff, if that's appropriate.
Sure.
Kevin, I don't know if this would come later in the process, but on the environmental, I just wanted to get a little bit of direction on when we submit the application. What will you require in order to determine whether it's going to be a class 32 exemption or a mitigated negative declaration, or is that something we should talk about later?
Rich, I can say that probably this would fall under a CEQA exemption, given the size of the parcel. We can certainly talk more offline about that, but that would likely be my determination.
Okay, that's great. We could talk about what would be required to substantiate that later. So thank you. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I might suggest if we check with Ms. Castillo to see if there's been any public comment submitted on this item before there's any other discussion, or if you move on to proceed with additional items.
Yeah, it looks like in the chat there is somebody who possibly has a question or would like to speak. Vanessa?
We have the VP of Design. He does not have audio, so he's unable to speak at this moment. I'm asking him if he's able to call in via phone.
Actually, I just got your link. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Hi. Sorry, I had some very technical difficulties, and I don't want to like derail what's going on right now, but just to clarify, and I know Valerie was speaking in on our design and intent. If I understand correctly, we are going to have to kind of work with staff prior to any next levels, and we're going to agree on what we intend to do. So I'm the one that controls the design of the building. So I'm assuming we're going to have to work with you to make sure that we're squared away on the building, and we're getting a staff level report where we obtain staff level approval. And then from there, we would go to hearing. Am I correct?
Not fully, sir. So you would make a formal submittal, and that submittal would be once it's deemed complete, and then under our rules, complete is that all the required items are submitted, and we would issue a letter of notice of completeness. And at that time, whatever package you put forward in terms of your design review and your conditional use permit package would be reviewed and considered by staff from the city as well as other reviewers from outside agencies. And then a formal report would be prepared, submitted to the Planning Commission for public hearing. So there is no negotiations, if you will, between yourselves and staff. We certainly are happy to work with you and your team and talk about the design issues and assist and guide. But at the end of the day, ultimately, you will put forward what you want the commission to consider in a formal public hearing process, and they would make the decision. Typically, the Planning Commission decisions are final unless they're appealed to City Council.
Understood. So we will either get support or we will not. We will go to Planning Commission, and then we will decide there what happens. Is that correct?
That is a great way to say it.
Okay, thank you.
Christopher, when we get tomorrow, I can go into more detail with you on the entitlement process.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
I just want to be clear. Does staff recommend or not recommend, or are they just silent when they send the report?
Typically, staff has the discretion, but typically we recommend an action to our commission.
Okay.
It's discretionary on the part of the commission to accept that.
So if we'll work with staff, and if you say let's say we talk about the colors and it's come up that we'll do this color, we would change that so that we could get staff approval or whatever, staff recommendation, because that's what we would want to go before commission with.
Correct. We always, so in the 600 plus restaurants I've done across the US, I just want to clarify, I always work to obtain staff approval and would like to have that, because obviously it makes your life less miserable in a hearing. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to clarify. Is that, and I apologize that I came late because I was having technical difficulties, but we will work with staff prior to the final report to confirm that we are meeting what we think are Indio's recommendations on the building, the site, the landscaping, the colors, the design. We're going to go through a process where we all come to the party and agree that we're going to walk into a hearing where we're lockstep and we agree that what we think is what we're presenting is approvable. Is that correct?
First of all, I appreciate your willingness to work with us. And I think Rich and his company have extensive experience working with our city, and they can guide you through that. You'll find the staff is pretty easy to work with. We can make a recommendation to the Planning Commission, but ultimately it's the Planning Commission's decision what to accept or not accept our recommendation. But we're happy to work with you and the entire team and develop a product that meets your needs and meets the needs and vision of the city together. You'll find that we're very collaborative in that regard, and happy to work with you and hopefully, bring you along to be a new member of our business community.
Sounds great. Yeah, no, I just, having been through many, many entitlements, I've just learned that you want to work to it's almost like what I would call the highest level of possible approval that you can get prior to the hearing so that you are not surprised at the last minute. So I appreciate it. Thank you. And we'll definitely work with you, and we look forward to it. And yes, we want to do what we can to maintain brand identity, but at the same time, having dealt with cities all over the country, I get it. Like, depending on the situational awareness and the site itself, how it faces a street, how the cars are coming out, what we need to do to meet the code. We are absolutely willing to work with you guys.
Okay. Thank you very much. Then if that's everything for 4.1, Kevin, let's move to 4.2, project consultation for proposed North Indio residential community by Pulte Homes.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Chair, we'll give a moment to load the PowerPoint here. But as the chair referenced, the item 4.2 is a proposed new single-family residential community in North Indio. There we go. Thank you. And so this project, let's see, come on. There we go. Oops. Okay, so this project is again in North Indio. It is bounded by Avenue 40 to the south, Jefferson to the west, Avenue 38 to the north, and Madison to the east. It is a large piece of property. The applicant is proposing a large development. They'll get more into that, but in summary, we're looking at approximately 1,400 homes. This would be a continuation, if you will, with some refinements of the Del Webb communities that have already been built in our city, specifically Sun City, Shadow Hills. The general plan designation is suburban neighborhood. The current zoning is residential low and village core. I do believe the applicant is going to be proposing to pursue a specific plan, but they will get more into that in their presentation. This is a conceptual drawing the applicant has provided of what the project would look like. I think one of the distinctions you'll note is there is no golf course element. And the applicant will get into that further in terms of market forces that have kind of dictated that removal of that design feature. But again, this is a large project. The applicant has shared with staff that they expect it to be built in multiple phases, depending on market forces. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant team is here in person, and they will be happy to give you a full presentation. They have a 3-hour presentation, I think, that they want to give you. I asked them to do it in 15 minutes instead. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the commission might have before we turn it over to the applicant team.
Commissioners, any questions for staff? Okay, we'll go ahead and turn it over then to the applicant, please, Kevin.
Okay, and so we're going to take a moment to load the applicant's presentation, and during that time, whoever's going to go first can head toward the podium.
We're waiting, Kevin. Let you know we're good. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Oh, go ahead and proceed. All right, good evening to you all. My name is Darren Warren, and I'm the Vice President of Land at Pulte Group Del Wed. I'm here tonight with our design team, which consists of MSA, who's handling all of our planning and our engineering. We're here Meridian Consultants, who are handling our EIR, and Jim Vaughn, who's our land use attorney and advisor on this project. We'd like to thank the commissioners for providing this opportunity to share our proposal for a new Del Webb active adult community in the city of Indio. This will be our fourth Del Webb community in the Coachella Valley and second in the city of Indio. We've created quite a legacy out here and are excited to see that continue. In fact, we've built now over 9,000 homes dating back to 1995 with our first closings at Sun City Palm Desert, which was a community of about 5,000 homes. Then followed that up with our Sun City Shadow Hills that you saw is next door to this project, which is approximately 3,500 homes, and had a great partnership with the city of Indio at that time. Then more recently moved to our site in the city of Rancho Mirage, our Del Webb Rancho Mirage, where we have now closed about 600 homes and have about 400 left there. Obviously, over that 30-year period, we've seen a lot of change, and we've seen our residents change as well, and we've fought to keep up with them. Today's Del Webb residents and prospects are more active and more youthful than what we'd seen in prior generations, with a real focus on health and wellness. They're truly active, seek vibrant, fulfilled lifestyles. They want to be more connected, both physically and through social media. They still enjoy golf and tennis, which had been our staples, but also hiking trails seem to be the number one thing, as well as playing a ton of pickleball, as many of us heard, which is quite fun. They value sustainability and want to leave less of a footprint on the world for their children. They truly appreciate arts, entertainment, and enjoy dining and drinking with their friends. Our communities are located and designed with these values in mind. From our end, it seems to be a perfect synergies with the city of Indio and its moniker as a city of festivals. Our new residents are targeting entertainment, the arts, great food, and ways to stay active and healthy. These are just the attributes that today's Indio has to offer. So we think it's a perfect partnership. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Paul DePilatis with MSA, who's going to walk you through our proposed site plan. Thank you.
So the arrows advance me, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Forward, left goes back.
Okay. Is there like a pointer on this too? And under this one? I want to like.
So if you, oh, no, there isn't a pointer.
Okay.
But if you want to move it.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, Kevin, you stole my thunder on your presentation there. So I think what was going to be about a 3.5 hour presentation will probably end up being about 15 minutes now. So you did everybody a service there. So let me just kind of maybe drill down a little bit into what Kevin's already told you in terms of location. So as he mentioned, this property is in North Indio, bounded by Jefferson, Madison, 38th and 40th. As you can see from this location map, it's near to the existing Sun City Shadow Hills project. The three quadrants to the south and east of this, you can see the golf course and things that constitute that project right now. To the north of this, and a little kind of a notch there, is the treatment plant. North of the project is the Talavera project, and then the high school is across Jefferson to the west. So as you can see, this is kind of a donut hole. It's a large piece of property, but it sort of infills the current fabric of the single family development up in that area. And then along a number of these public routes adjacent to the project, we have a kind of a budding pedestrian and bike route system that this project would have the advantage of tying into. Taking a little closer look at the project, as you can see, this is a single-family detached subdivision. It's about 377 acres, and will result in about 1,500 homes when built. There is a central clubhouse amenity, no golf. In place of that are kind of a system of interconnected paseos within the project. There are buffers adjacent to the treatment plant, and then a couple of different entry options, one a little more traditional, and then a second one that we utilize a turning circle there, which has some advantages in terms of both kind of a presentation of the project as well as some safety issues. But the jury's still out on that a little bit, and we will kind of do what the city would like to see down there, but wanted to show you these couple of options in the presentation to you today. Looking at the structure of the project, the purple lines here show the vehicular system. The green lines show the pedestrian system. So there are major points of access on 38th, 40th, and Madison. And then kind of a loop system that accesses the balance of the property to the west. The green lines show kind of the connection of major backbone paseos throughout the project. So these all lead into that central core amenity and then branch out toward the public roads on the edge to be able to connect with that those pedestrian and bicycle patterns that we saw earlier. So you'll see that there are between 1 and 2 different kind of major connections out from the project to allow if you wanted to bike or walk into the broader system throughout the community. We're envisioning about 5 major phases to the project, and these would move from southeast to northwest. Obviously, these are a little influenced by demand and things, so this could vary, but this gives you a general idea of how the progression of the project and utilities would occur. And they would envision this probably in about an 8-year build out to this program. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Darren, and he can tell you a little bit about what they envision the project to be like with some points and photos.
Thank you. So that gives you the site and what our thinking is there. And I think you can see in looking at that is everything is kind of geared toward this connectivity. As you noted that we've now we're electing not to build yet another golf course out here. We've got a great golf course to the south, another executive course to the east, and I think they'll benefit from the additional play. And we plan to have a deal with that HOA and to kind of incorporate our users into that group. But what we've done with this and what we learned in our Rancho Mirage project is there's better uses for our residents for that open space. So we've taken what is similar size open space and spread it around to more areas. You'll see, separations between backyards more than you see on other projects. And you also see these walking paseos. So we feel really good about how we've used that open space because it's more useful. I mean, when you have a golf course, you don't get that use because you can't walk on it when people are playing golf. So that's been a big positive for us at our other project, and we want to incorporate that here. The other piece of being, having success with Del Webb is really about presenting that lifestyle and that next step. And that's about having, as we talked about, vibrant, thriving lifestyle. And that starts with, in the Del Webb model on facilitating that lifestyle, which is we will have full-time general manager, lifestyle director, and support staff and maintenance and the like. Who in that group will, they're responsible for putting together the common interest groups and clubs, for event planning, for excursion planning, for dealing with the adjacent properties that we have and forming groups with them so that there's synergies between the various residential groups. Another big part of it we've talked about, obviously, is the trails, the pocket parks, the rest areas are essential to the Del Webb lifestyle. We also view this as resort living. And we always want to carry with this that kind of grand resort entry. So you feel like you're coming to a place, you're staying to vacation, yet that's where you're living. This all centers around, as we mentioned, this amenity center. And, that's where we put a lot of our focus, design efforts, and you get that great play area for our people. And, the type of things we have in there, a big, great room for joining. This is connectivity. This is a newer thing that we've done. You won't see our older Del Webbs is this indoor, outdoor living and these big breezeways that we're creating for people to hang out, with the ability to shut those down when it's 110 out in the desert. Of course, fitness centers, game rooms, both covered and outdoor pools, with lap pools as well as resort, the ballrooms, event lawns, and you will see some use of water. Obviously, we're limited in what we can do with CVWD. We will adhere to those restrictions, but the water we do have, we want to make use of it. We want people to truly enjoy it. Again, there's additional activity rooms, conference rooms, computer rooms, and the like. And so that's a huge focus of it, and just kind of wanted to run you through a couple of designs that we've done recently and just give you a look at it. This is kind of a bird's eye view that shows at Rancho Mirage currently what we've got. That's our big amenity core there, showing some of the walking trails on the picture on the top, and then that kind of grand entry that I mentioned. Moving through, this is at our Lake Las Vegas project that's recently been built out. And this kind of shows you on the left is really the ballroom, the feature, the breezeway feature in the middle, and then some of the other rooms and fitness with the pool areas, resort pool on the right. And we just have a few of these to give you an example of kind of the styles we're talking about as well. A little bit more modern than what we've seen in the past, still using some classic styles, but some sharper lines, more progressive coloring and the like. Again, a better picture of the pool amenity. And this one here is actually a true photo of our Rancho Mirage project as it's ultimately been built out. You can see the event lawn, and what you're looking into, that lighted area is that breezeway that's completely open, the great room to the right that ties into that, and then the multiple pools on the left. And this is from within that breezeway, and you get a feel for what a great feel that is. The views of the Santa Rosas here. We envision something similar to that in this project. The use of, just want to demonstrate kind of the use of the water, the flowing water. This sits outside of that event lawn for enjoyment for our residents. That entry feature that I mentioned, this is the guard shack when you come in, that resort feel as you move in. And then moving out front, really, a great sense of arrival as you get to your new home. With that, just kind of wanted to push through a couple of examples. Obviously, we're going to be working closely with you as we dial in the designs on this, but we just kind of want to give you our concepts. I mean, we're staying with some classic concepts, Spanish, Italianate, Tuscan, things of that nature. It doesn't lose its allure, but we want to modernize it somewhat. I think you'll see kind of less texture, sharper lines, better coloration on some of these. This would be more of our Italianate, with the stone tile on the outside, a little bit more of the Spanish, but less ornate. Again, Italianate in one of our larger models. And we kind of see this as kind of the villa with some materials, different materials we'll use on the front of these. And finally, kind of a Tuscan style. So it just gives you an idea of where we're thinking we're going. And of course, we're happy to sit down with you and talk about, different styles we might introduce on this project. This is from our Lake Las Vegas project. And with that, I think that That covers our presentation, our formal presentation, and we'd like to open it up to any questions you might have.
Yeah, certainly. I have a couple questions I'll start with. You were saying a proposed 8-year build out. Is that comparable to your scheduling for some of the other recent developments, Del Webb out here, like Del Webb Rancho Mirage? I know it's still being built. Is that a similar timeline, or is this a little bit longer of a timeline?
There we go. A few more homes. We're at about 1,000 homes, 1,028 at Rancho Mirage, and our build out pace is much greater than we anticipated there. It's going to be somewhere on the order of 4.5 to 5 years. We anticipate being somewhere around 180 to 200 a year. And so I think this puts, as we say, 8 years, that's about 187 a year. When you look back, there's been times when Shadow Hills was selling at 500 a year, and then times when it was selling at 100. So kind of depends on the market. We tend to move through a couple of markets with these long range projects, but we feel like 8's a pretty good gauge.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with the Del Webb facilities in Rancho Mirage, and I am a big fan of those walking paseos, as you call them, kind of connecting the community, kind of gives nice, look, rather than just having homes butt up against each other, their backyards, gives some walkability, gives some nice landscape, throughout the property. I look forward to seeing your concepts as you develop them for this project. Also, some of the concepts that you were just showing look like some were a little bit smaller size and some were quite a bit larger. Do you have a pretty broad range of proposed square footage on these homes? Do you have any idea what that is ranging from?
Yeah, we do. We basically introduced 3 different lot sizes to hit different price points. And we go anywhere from a 45 wide lot up to like a 64-foot wide lot. So our products that we're proposing are 35, 42, and 54 feet wide. And that's what you were seeing with the different sizes of the houses. And they kind of hit those different ranges, anywhere from about 1,200 square feet on our smallest up to roughly 2,800. We might even have some additional footage that can be added to that larger plan. But I think we peak out at just over 2,800, I think, on the large plan.
Okay, thank you so much. If any other commissioners have any questions for applicant, please.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I love the fact that there's not a golf course. Yay. I love the fact that there is the paseos. It looks like the paseos are going to be more desert landscape. It doesn't look like they're going to be green belts. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to put as much green as we can get away with. We like green. If you go through Mirage, you'll see that there's some pockets where we're able to take some of the trails and then roll them in and have kind of that cool, green space. Maybe we put a table there, and that's what we'll look to do. But we get real limited because of water usage at CVWD on how much we can have. Sometimes it's about activating an area, so we'll try to make that active to get a little bit more. But we'll do everything we can, believe me, to maximize that. We do put it, certainly we use some of that near the clubhouse because that's a big gathering area. But we'll put it strategically, where we can and connect it with more of that desert scape you see.
That would be great. I mean, I guess if the green space has a purpose and an activation, great. If it's just to look pretty, then no, we have to, of course, watch our water consumption out here. You mentioned about how active people are now in retirement versus maybe, 30, 40 years ago. I didn't see any pickleball courts or tennis courts listed in your amenities. Is that something you are going to have, or you are at this point not going to have?
Yeah, we absolutely will. Tennis, used to be a major part, and we'd have tournaments there. So we might have 6 or 8 courts. We're now pulling that back. We still have the tennis players, so we'll probably on a project of this size 2 to 4, we'll do our studies to figure out what level we have. But then the other side is the pickleball is exploding, and that absolutely will be there. I got to straighten that out in my presentation so that's clear. Probably anywhere from 6 to 8 pickleball courts with the type of usage we get now. And then the questions, jury's still out on bocce. We have them at Mirage. It's being played less, but we'll evaluate that one, and maybe it's yet another pickleball court. So.
Okay, I have lots of friends that live in both sides of Palm Desert and Sun City Shadow Hills. And the one difference that everybody always points out is that Palm Desert has sidewalks and Sun City Shadow Hills does not. And some people feel maybe safer walking on a sidewalk. So I'm assuming that these will not have sidewalks because you're going to encourage people to walk in the paseos instead of on the street.
Yeah. That's something we can look into, because we debate that, right? If there's a route that they can get there with a trail, then we'd say, hey, that's a better use of that space. If we don't have a good connection, then that particular area needs to have a sidewalk. And I think that's one we can certainly talk with you folks about as we're designing this. And evaluate where the best place for sidewalks are. Obviously, on the main backbone areas, we've got meandering sidewalks and various walkways along those. But you're right, in front of the homes, there's been times when we haven't done that because we feel like there's an alternative way to walk through. So,
okay, I think that's important. People just don't feel as, I guess, safe walking on the actual street sometimes. So that I think that make sure we take a good look at that. When it comes to the lakes, don't get me wrong, I love lakes. They're beautiful. Okay, the sound of running water is just amazing. But with all of the, water shortages that we've got in the state of California, I'm assuming that CVWD is being very, very careful as to how much water usage for basically an amenity, right, or something that looks good and sounds great is being done. So I'm assuming you're going to be meeting with them and discussing that in great detail.
Absolutely, that's a big part of it. And this is unique too, in that we've got reclaimed, recycled water readily available. And so the question is might we be able to use that to provide some of the features? So there's a lot of discussion that needs to go on with CVWD on that. Certainly, obviously, we're limited. We'll do whatever limitations they put on us, but we're hoping we can be creative and get as many water type features as possible.
Great. And my last question, or basically comment, was I think you mentioned that the plan is to, even though this is a separate HOA, right, from the other two Sun City Shadow Hills, that the owners will be able to basically use each other's amenities. Did I understand that clearly?
Yeah, not fully. We would get a ton of pushback from our Shadow Hills friends if we had them shipped over there. But what we want to do is certainly the public golf courses. So we want to set up a deal between the HOAs so that our folks have the ability to use those courses and those amenities. As far as the others, that's where kind of the lifestyle directors can get together and have conversations and see if there's some joint use that makes sense. Certainly, joint, parties for certain things or get-togethers or getting a band, that you're going to have come out. We want them to be talking and see if there's some synergies between those groups that help the two. But we would not envision having access to all of the facilities in Shadow Hills for this user.
Okay, so each Shadow Hills 1, 2, and now 3 will use mostly their own amenities.
Yes, yeah, they would not use these. We will size this for our 1,400 to 1,500 homes accordingly, and then like I said, we'll see what joint uses there might be through a separate agreement between the HOAs.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Those were my questions.
I have a couple of questions. Hello.
Hi there.
Good evening. So you're part of Pulte Homes. Are you part of the Pulte Homes that's building in Palm Desert, in Domani, finishing up that development?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Sorry. Yeah, that's it's not branded Del Webb, but it's what we call Pulte Active Adult, because it was, half built out. It's smaller. It doesn't have some of the amenities that normally a Del Webb does. So we kept it under that brand name.
And I'm a big fan of Del Webb too. You guys do a great job within, the community. I've sold a few homes in there, and I can't wait till I turn 55 and I can my kids to go live in there. As far as the gate, how many gates do you guys plan on having for, entry and to enter and exit the complex, and where do you plan on putting the main gate?
Yeah, right now, I think, well, we've got it. The main gate is coming currently. The way we've got it planned is off of 40th across from the current golf course entry. So that they would, we kind of share that. I think that helps both the golf course as, there's one signal at that point. That's where we've, potentially contemplated a roundabout, but that would be the primary entry. And then we would have an entry off of Madison. That is across from the existing Shadow Hills entry on Madison, and then an additional entry on 38th. And we've elected to keep the entry off of Jefferson over there because of the school traffic and just not wanting to add to that.
Okay, so the entries off of Madison and Avenue 38, that's pretty much just going to be for the residents. It's not going to be for any guests. The guests would be entering.
Yeah, guests would come in off the main entry on 40th.
Okay. And do we plan on, and I'm not sure if it's a question for you or for staff, as far as any signal lights that will be required to be put in front of the main entry? I know that Avenue 40 tends to be, the traffic tends to be a little heavy on there, especially during school drop off and pickup time.
I can answer that, Commissioner. So the applicant will be preparing a environmental impact report. This, as the commission may be aware, this is an extensive environmental analysis that addresses a number of issue areas, including transportation and traffic. Earlier in the presentation, it was referenced that the applicant is proposing a potential roundabout access off of Avenue 40 that could replace the need for a signalized intersection. However, that's something that they're continuing to talk with our city engineering team about. So that will that issue of the appropriateness of signals, the warrants for signals, that will be looked at as part of that environmental impact report. And the applicant, as I said earlier, will be preparing that. And ultimately, you as a commission will be looking at that and determining whether or not you find that it's appropriate to recommend to council the certification of that environmental impact report.
Okay, thank you. Now, as far as the build out, you mentioned there's going to be how many phases? I'm sorry. And I know you have an estimated of 8 years to build out the entire community, but do you know about how long each phase is going to take and how many phases there's going to be?
Yeah, we've got this broken down into 5 major development phases, but each one of those phases will have a phasing of its own. So really, when we roll out a phase, it's more on the order of 20 houses or so, and then we'll roll for and those 20 would come out along all into phase 1 first, because that's what we'll deliver from an infrastructure standpoint, streets and the lots, and the clubhouse area. We deliver that first, and then we'll go and develop 2, and then 3, and then 4. So those are really our mass, development phases, not so much the individual home phases.
Okay. And as far as supplies, I know and this is not your company, it's with another builder that was building new homes during COVID. I know that some of the supplies are very scarce, so the end product of a new home wasn't the best. I've had some clients that purchased new homes, and within a week there was a flood, there was gas leaks, there was things falling apart in the kitchen. So I just wanted to see how how is the supply right now? Are you able to get good quality supplies to build, or I just want to make sure that we're building good quality homes. Not that the other company didn't build a good quality home, but just because what was available to them at the time, the end product for some of these people wasn't the best. So
Yeah, I got you. That's a major, major focus for our construction side of the business nationally. And, we've got national agreements on most of the major components of the house. And, because we're the third largest builder in the country, we do get priority over others. So yes, we've battled to get certain things, but as far as the core of the house, that has not been an issue for us. Concrete, lumber, and things of that nature, we are getting everything we need. There's times where we've struggled a little bit with appliances, and we've had to put substitute appliances in the short run, and we're having to come back later and replace those. But again, we kind of stand by everything we do from a quality standpoint. It's a major focal point in our company, and that's not going to change. If we're trying to notify if we have to put something in that's different than what was originally specified, we're going to let you know. We're going to let you know what the schedule is to replace it. But we certainly will never put low quality materials into the house, and we'll stand by that.
Well, that's good to hear. And I think another factor into having a quality product is obviously taking care of our workers. They're out there working in 100+ degree weather, and going through losses through family members for COVID. So maybe offering like donuts for them on Friday so they can show up to work and build a beautiful home, and we don't have any hiccups along the building, or just something just to make sure that we're providing a good work environment for them too, because I think that has a lot to do with the end product of whatever project we're working on.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Having been out here as long as we have, I think that helps. We recognize that you get into conditions that are just, unbearable at times. And so we've modified our work days to try to make sure that we're not out there at the hottest day, times of the day, and make sure that the shade structures and the water facilities and all the other support facilities are there. That's a must on our job sites. Job safety is a focal point for our company. Our construction VP gets bonused on it, so it's important, believe me. And we recognize that it is dangerous out there working in this desert conditions. And like I said, we value our workers because as many houses we're building, if we don't take care of them, they're not going to be there for us.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you for answering our questions and for your time.
I have one more question, if you don't mind. I missed it earlier.
Certainly.
I noticed on the site plan that you have 2 proposed substations. We really didn't talk about that. So I'm assuming that's a conversation you're involved with IID as to where that substation is going to eventually be placed, correct?
Yeah, right now we're in the secondary one is where we don't want to be. We want to be on the top one that's next to those lots there. We're in final negotiations to purchase that piece of property. If for some reason we can't purchase that piece of property, then we would look to move to the other locations. Both the locations are suited well for the transmission line that we can feed off of, which is in 40th. So it kind of decreases the new transmission that would need to go in. But yeah, in our early discussions with IID, they're saying this whole region, for this region to get powered up, it's essential a substation gets built. And so we'll be in kind of negotiation to see how we get that built and sharing the cost with some of our neighbors that are also benefiting.
Okay. And are most of these lines going to be buried underground? I mean, you think about, old school substations, right? And nobody wants their house up next to old school substation. So yeah. What kind of how is this going to impact the people that are living right around that space?
You're going to see it, but they have a kind of a newer low profile version of it. So it doesn't have the height, which allows you to better screen it with landscaping, and taller trees. I've got a few examples that I'm certainly will be sharing with you folks as we get closer down the road on design. Okay. and we're looking at that. We have that same concern. And we'll be looking at kind of at the lots around that substation to see if, if there's value in building those, or if we buffer a little more, but we'll need to figure that out as we nail down the actual final location.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure to bring that up, that's going to be a concern, not just probably for the planning commission, but for people that are going to live there in the future. And I understand we need it, but let's be careful how we build it. So, okay, that was my last question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, sir, for the presentation. We look forward to seeing more on this development.
Great. Thank you for your time, folks. Appreciate it.
Here, I might suggest before proceeding to any other items, just to check with Ms. Castillo to see if any public comments been submitted on item 4.2 this evening.
Certainly. Vanessa, do we have any other public comments or anyone in chambers who would like to comment?
There are none and nobody online.
Okay. Before we move to item 4.3, maybe we can take a quick 5-minute break and come back at 7:15 to go over 4.3, the draft article 4.
Chair, we could certainly do that. Just very quickly, I just want to note that I mentioned earlier there'll be an environmental impact report prepared for this. The applicant will also be doing a specific plan, and that specific plan will have to be compliant with our adopted general plan 2040. So because of the size and scale of this, the environmental impact report, it'll be a little while before this comes back to you for formal consideration. I'm sure the applicant, as they go along, may want to check in with you if they have changes, but you may not see this for a little while. But nevertheless, we do appreciate the applicant bringing forward. This is a large project for North Indio, and I know that they're committed also to community engagement to keep their neighbors around them aware of this project as it moves along.
Okay, very well. Thank you so much, Kevin. Then we will adjourn this study session item and move on to 4.3 in about 5 minutes. Reconvene at 7:15, please. Introduce you to someone. This is Melissa Suarez. Thanks, Joe. Take care. Appreciate it. Yep.
Here without the distractions at home.
See you.
Okay, if we're able to call this meeting back to order and move on to item 4.3, draft Article 4 of Unified Development Code.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Do we have all commissioners present? We have 1, 2,
I'm here.
and 3. Great, thank you. All right, thank you, Chair. So this item 4.3, we're continuing our discussions of draft articles of the Unified Development Code. This is what we refer to for the zoning code update. This evening, we're joined by Roger Eastman. You last saw Roger when we talked about the draft sign code. And before I turn Roger loose on you to go over Article 4, I just wanted to note that in the conversation with the sign code, you had given some input to Roger on potential changes to or desire to see some changes to the temporary sign elements of the draft sign code. And Roger and Zach have been working together to address those. So the next time we come back at you and talk about the sign code, your thoughts and ideas will be incorporated as much as we can into that. But this evening, again, we're here to talk about Article 4. Roger Eastman with Lisa Wise Consulting is taking the lead on this article, and he's going to walk you through a discussion on that. So, Roger, it's all yours.
Thank you, Kevin, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Roger Eastman with Lisa Wise Consulting. Remy and Associates, Alessandra and Simran are not with us tonight, so you're stuck with me, I'm afraid. Just want to confirm you can see my screen, correct?
We can.
Yes. Good, excellent. So we've got a couple of introductory slides as we normally do. I've introduced myself. What we're going to talk about tonight is really Article 4, the specific to uses regulations and some key changes from your current code. I'm going to quickly give you a reminder of where we are in this process, and then this is a work session with you. So we really encourage questions, comments from you about the specific to use section. As you know, we're updating the zoning code to essentially be consistent with your 2040 general plan as required by law. And the goal of this whole project, as you've heard many times over the last few months, is to modernize the code, to make it as usable as possible, to improve and streamline your permitting and procedures. Public notification, of course, is a necessary part of any major code update like this. And as Simran has explained in the past, there's been project mailers to all residents about the project. A project website has been set up. And then there are online interactive parcel-based maps for both the draft general plan and the zoning map changes. So members of the public can see what's going on by clicking on that link. So far, we've had 4 out of 6 commission workshops, 2 more to go on other components of the zoning code. So tonight, we're going to be focusing on Article 4, which is the regulations for specific uses. So let's just take a moment and think about the current code. Chapter 159 is your zoning regulations of the municipal code, and within it, the standards for the specific uses like temporary uses, home occupations, tattoo parlors, and so on, are really poorly organized. They're within this long list of different other sections within the code, so it makes it hard to use. So what we've done is assess the organization with Ramey and Associates, identified what standards were outdated, identified what standards needed to be included based on recent California government code law, and identified the need for a comprehensive overhaul and update. And what we've done is organized all the specific uses into one article, Article 4. And so the purpose of these next 3 slides is to give you a sense of how this particular article is organized. And what we've done is, in alphabetical order, listed all of the specific uses. These are all tied back to the use tables. So when you're looking in a use table for the residential zones, commercial zones, industrial zones, you'll see a link in those use tables that takes you to Article 406, Cannabis Activity, if that's what you're looking for, or convenience markets, or so on. And what we've done in these 3 slides is show you in red what is new and the existing provisions that are being carried forward, updated as necessary. And I did a quick count as I was preparing for this meeting this evening. You have 14 new uses added to the list of specific to uses, and 12 have been carried forward and updated. So now let's go through some of these at a high level. We would be here for hours if we were going to go through them in a lot of detail. So I'll spare you that. What we're going to start with is the uses that are carried forward from the existing code, updated as necessary, starting in alphabetical order with the adult-oriented businesses. So we're retaining Chapter 120 of the Municipal Code, which is the permitting procedures for adult businesses. That is untouched. But we have added updated location standards. For example, an adult business cannot be located more than 500 feet, less than 500 feet from another adult business. And they need to be more than 1,000 feet from schools, religious uses, parks, libraries, childcare facilities, and things like that. Also, they need to be 250 feet or more from the on-premise sale of alcohol, or from any zone except the IL and IH zone. So as you probably know, adult uses have to be allowed in a community. You can't outright prohibit them. So you have to allow for them to be in some location within the city, and they are allowed as a use permit in IL and IH. Moving on to animal keeping. This is your Chapter 159, 605, and 608, which have been extensively revised and updated now. Consistent with what you saw from the sign code, we've included some tables and a number of supplementary standards, and we've added standards for beekeeping. So here's an example of one of those tables that organizes the animal keeping by type, large livestock or small livestock, and then based on the size of the lot, tells you how many animals are allowed. And the purpose of this is animal keeping, while highly desirable within our communities, can have secondary effects. You know, all animals produce waste. You've got to be careful of runoff from horse corrals or large livestock corrals. You've got to be careful with noise from certain animals. And then you've got to establish clear standards for feeding, maintenance, for the health and well-being of the animals. So they're all now included in the code. We've also added standards for beekeeping in the zones you see on the slide here. And beekeeping is something that's becoming more and more desirable in many communities because of, as you're probably well aware, the decline in bees across the nation. Moving on to automotive service and repair and refueling stations, we've really carried forward most of your existing standards, updated them as necessary. For example, all work needs to be conducted inside of a building. There are separation standards from residential uses. And for example, the doors of the automotive service and repair facilities for new uses anyway, should be faced away from the street and away from residential properties. Cannabis activity, all we're doing is providing a cross-reference to Chapter 123, Cannabis Activity of the Municipal Code. And then we've expanded and updated, consistent with the government code, the child daycare in the home, both small and large daycare centers. And again, there are operational standards and standards that, for example, say these need to be incidental to the home. They're very important in our communities for obvious reasons, that the residential nature of the neighborhood prevails and the child daycare is a secondary use within the home. Emergency shelters are updated, consistent with the government code. Home occupations, very minimal revisions really in the home occupation section, very standard across most California cities. And, you know, for example, no employees, limitations on parking, limitations on visitation, and so on. The manufactured mobile home park section, the biggest change with this is that under your current code, a specific plan is actually required for the approval of a manufactured mobile home park. And in consultation with staff, we've addressed this now as Planning Commission approval through design review for a new manufactured mobile home park. And we've updated the standards for screening, recreational amenities, and so on. And the other important point about the manufactured home is they are now proposed to be allowed as homes in single-family residential zones. This again is really important as a mechanism for promoting affordability within our cities. For RV parks, we've updated the existing provisions with new standards. Similarly, for the tattoo, body art, body piercing establishments. And again, there's your typical location standards, 500 feet from other tattoo parlors, and then 1,000 feet from schools, parks, libraries, etc., and 1,000 feet from another tattoo parlor. The telecommunications wireless facilities section, we worked closely with city staff and we rolled forward the small wireless regulations from your current code that Kevin and the city attorney worked on fairly recently and that were adopted by city council fairly recently. We did, though, update some sections of the wireless and telecommunications facilities section, adding, for example, eligible facilities requests consistent with recent law. And if you're not sure what an eligible facility request is, it's a modification of an existing tower or base station that doesn't really substantially change the physical dimensions of that tower or base station. So it's a really minor change, but it allows for those changes to be approved at a staff level, which makes sense when you think about how dependent we are on wireless communications these days. Moving on to temporary uses. The biggest change with the temporary use section is we've made a distinction based on input from staff about temporary uses that require a temporary use permit, as you see on the right side of the screen, and those that do not require a temporary use permit. So if somebody's establishing a garage sale or providing for indoor entertainment, no city approvals are required. There are basic rules for what needs to occur at these types of events, but no permit is required. You'd only go through the TUP process for offsite auto and RV sales, the swap meet, and so on. Moving on then to the new specific uses. We've added bail bonds and check cashing businesses with specific separation standards and limited hours standards and operational standards. These are the same standards you've heard me use for some of the others, 1,000 feet from another bail bond use or check cashing business use, or 500 feet from schools, parks, libraries, daycare facilities, and so on. When it comes to convenience markets, I'm actually going to defer back to Kevin, Community Development Director, to make a comment.
Thank you, Roger. So the reason why this is a placeholder commission is because in the past, there's been discussions at the commission level as well as council level on whether there was any interest in placing some sort of limitation on convenience markets, either standalone or convenience markets with fueling stations. As the commission is well aware, we do have a number of these in our community existing. We also have several that are being proposed. And so this is a topical area where either this evening, if there's interest on the part of the commissioners present, or at another future date, we would like the input of the commission. There are ways to address the limitations. You can limit the total number, for example. You could place geographic spacing standards. As an example, you can't have them within a mile of each other. But because this has been brought up in the past in various forums, we thought it appropriate to not necessarily propose anything at this point in terms of regulations for specific uses, but just to get the commission's feedback if you're so inclined. And it can either be done now if you would like, or we can wait till the end of Roger's presentation and revisit it.
Commissioners, any feedback at this time, or do you want to save that till the end?
I would like more information. I mean, to discuss it, I mean, I'd like to know how many convenience stores we have, Where are they located? Are they standalone? Are they part of a gas station? I mean, without being able to visualize that, I'm going to have a hard time saying, do we want to limit the number or the distance? I agree that we probably have quite a few, but I'm not sure what that number is. So is there a way to get that information from staff?
There is. We can put that information. This is the kind of feedback we're looking for. So you don't necessarily have to get into the details, but if you need that information to have a well-rounded conversation, we can certainly do that. So what I heard is how many are there? Where are they located? And then Commissioner Franz, you said something else that I didn't catch.
Are they standalone or part of a gas station?
Okay, thank you.
And also, we're short a couple of our commissioners tonight, so perhaps, you know, that's some information they'd like to receive as well. So maybe we'll table that for maybe during another one of the study sessions, we can revisit that.
We can certainly revisit it, and I will reach out to the commissioners that aren't present this evening to let them know this question is out there so that they can give any feedback, including information requests like Commissioner Franz did.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving on then, we've added cottage food operations and cottage industry, consistent with the government code, simple operational standards, again, consistent with that code. The primary distinction between cottage food is both of these are similar to a home occupation. So there's no direct sales from the cottage food operation in the home. The cottage industry, though, is a little different. It's a larger facility. It's still in the home. The rules are established to create no impact to residential neighborhoods, even though they can have up to a maximum of 3 employees. We've also added standards for drive-through uses based on some previous work we've done in another community. The goal here is, you know, we have to allow for drive-through uses. But how can we do it in a way that minimizes the impact on our communities from lots of idling cars and the visual impacts that come from parked cars waiting in a drive-through lane? So some of the rules include, for example, that the drive-through itself can't be on a primary street facing frontage. They need to be screened in some way. And that the stacking area needs to accommodate a minimum of 5 cars, so you don't have backup of the drive-through into the parking lanes or parking areas. We've added live work consistent with the general plan and consistent with national best practices for live work. So this is essentially a commercial use in which people would have, or the owners would have, a residence either behind the working facility or above it, which is the more typical model. And then we've established simple standards for the design, the layout, the area, and the organization of it, how many employees, and so on. Massage establishments, standalone facilities have got location and separation standards consistent with what I've shared in the past. And then for mini storage, warehouse, or facility, we've added some operational standards. And I think this is one area. I got an email from Ramey and Associates suggesting that there's a desire from the city to consider additional standards from what you see in the code. For example, to add new standards for a fronting retail use. I believe the concern is that there's not a lot of employment generated out of a mini storage warehouse facility. So the idea was to maybe add some fronting retail uses. We look forward to your comments on that at the end of my presentation.
Before you move on, I'll just add to what you said. So as the commission is aware, many storage facilities, they provide a qualitative aspect to our community in terms of providing offsite storage opportunity for residents and businesses. They do typically generate low employment numbers, limited property tax, and limited sales tax for the city. So a topic that we will be bringing back to discuss with you at a later date is whether or not the commission ultimately wants to recommend to the city council that there be any component of a mini storage facility and or RV storage facility would have to have some sort of fronting office or retail commercial component that would actually be in front of the proposed storage use. The storage use would be behind that, and that would introduce a kind of a mixed use orientation, if you will, into that setting, and also provide for perhaps more employment and or sales tax generation and perhaps some enhanced property tax. So that's that's an idea that we're working on, and we'll flesh that out a little bit more. But just wanted to kind of expand a little bit on what Roger said.
Thank you, Kevin. Getting close to wrapping this up now for outdoor storage. Very precise rules on where outdoor storage is allowed and under what conditions and when it needs to be screened. Similarly, for pawn shops and resale consignment thrift shops, typical location and operational standards, as you've heard me discuss so far. And then wrapping up with smoke shops. Again, location and operational standards for smoke shops, or vape shops as they're sometimes called. And one of the more interesting standards was one for training of the staff, primarily to ensure, of course, that minors are not purchasing cigarettes or tobacco products. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I welcome any questions and discussion from the Planning Commission. And then I'll wrap up with a few slides after that. So here's a couple of questions that may help you as you think about this presentation and the materials you've reviewed. And I'm happy to answer any questions with Kevin.
I was just going to say, commissioners, I think all of you present this evening have picked up your workbooks for the Unified Development Code, which should have Article 4 within it. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at that ahead of time, and either you have questions of your own, or you can respond to the questions on the screen. These aren't the only questions. These are just prompter questions to get a dialogue going.
Kevin, I still need to coordinate that, picking that up there at City Hall. But do any of the commissioners have any questions or any discussion?
No, I mean, this section wasn't as, I don't think as intense. I think the only thing, I had a couple of questions on page 22, which is part of the live work section. And, you know, this whole idea of live work is something that we've been talking about forever, right? And I think if it's done right, it's going to really differentiate the city of Indio from maybe other cities. That I don't think there's that many cities in our area that have this kind of space. So I found it interesting in that section 4.15.04 that once we give permission for a live work unit, that it cannot be converted to entirely residential use unless authorized through an administrative use permit approval. So if I'm reading that right, that means that if, I don't know, they come back and they say, we want to turn it all into condos, right? Instead of retail and living space, that they will just need an administrative permit and it would not come back to Planning Commission for a discussion. Is that correct?
Commissioner France, yes, that as written, that is what is intended. Do you have other ideas on what you think that should be?
You know, well, I'd like to hear from Kevin why he thinks that it would be, I mean, that it should be that easy to convert or change it. I mean, if we go through the process of saying this is the live workspace, right, and it goes through Planning Commission, and it goes through everything, we get the zoning. And I mean, I'm not saying Kevin, but we get a person there and they think, oh yeah, sure, no problem, let's just change it all to residential without really talking to the Planning Commission or the City Council. That's to me, that's a little, I'm not sure why we would make it that easy. Do we want to make it that easy?
Sure, Commissioner. I don't plan on going anywhere unless you know something I don't.
Nobody's here forever, right?
Yeah, fair question. This is a concept. So as the administrative use permit process is being worked on, it would still be noticed. Individuals would still have the opportunity. But as you point out, Commissioner, this would be done at the staff level typically. And the thought is that once a party's gone through that, they would have a vehicle to come back to the city for consideration. You as a commission don't have to agree with this, and I suspect this is going to be a topic as we get into the permits and procedures where we're gonna have a robust dialogue on what the commission wants to retain and what the commission is comfortable with pushing down to staff level. And this is an example where you may or may not be comfortable with that. So, it doesn't, this is as proposed, as Roger pointed out, it doesn't have to be this way. If the commission thinks there's value in having that come back to the commission, if there's going to be a change or a requested change, then, certainly you can recommend that to council. What we're trying to do is to streamline our processes where we can to provide a vehicle of efficiency for the parties as well as staff. But again, this is just a proposal, not written in stone.
Okay, well, I would like to make sure that we mark this section. I don't know what the rest of the commissioners feel, but I think it's something that we, wherever we are giving some of our authority down to staff, I really want to make sure we understand what it is we are doing, because like anything else in the world, once we give it up, we're never going to get it back. So I want to make sure that we're doing it for the right reasons and the right parts of our city, will benefit, and we're not going to end up regretting this 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years down the road.
Commissioner France, if I could just add to that one thought, live work units are going to be in the commercial zones, right? So they're typically going to be on a street or behind a parking lot in amongst other commercial uses. So the chances of it really being turned to an entirely residential use, I would suggest, is probably fairly low. But your point is well taken. Do you really want to do that administratively through staff or have that high level of review? Look forward to the future conversation on that.
Thank you.
And I just would note, Commissioner Franz made a really good point here. This is something we'll note. And as you go through these efforts where you see these questions about the proper level of review, not just in this particular instance with live work, but with anything, please highlight those for us so that we can keep an ongoing list of topics to return to. This will become really important when we get to the Article 6, which is permits and procedures. But, in various other articles where we do have reference to the processes, if you are wanting to talk those through, please highlight those for us so that we are making sure we bring them back to you for a future conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner Franz, for pointing that out. Any other comments or Commissioner Espy?
No comment, sorry.
I just had one more question. And I made a note, I was trying to find it in my little book, but I found it. Under section 4.16.03, which is the manufactured homes in single family zones. I want to make sure I clearly understood what this does. And I know the rules for how you build homes in California has changed dramatically, right? So if there is an empty lot in, let's pick on Indian Palms Country Club, since they have a lot of different country clubs and designs and builds in there. If you have an area where there is an empty lot surrounded by single family residents, is the HOA still going to be able to say that it must be a traditional single family home, or are they going to have to, by law, allow for a manufactured home?
Roger, do you want to tackle that or you want me to?
Well, Kevin, with all due respect, I'm more familiar with Arizona law, where I've lived and worked for 25 years, and I know the answer off the top of my head. I'm not sure if my answer would be true in California, Kevin. So if you don't mind, I would defer to you. Just for background, here in Arizona, cities and towns do not have any input in homeowners associations, CC&Rs. So the city rules would trump whatever the CC&Rs say. I presume that's true in California, but I'm not entirely sure.
So Zach is going to lead us off with the legal.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So if I'm understanding it right, the question is, would HOAs still be able to prohibit this type of product within their community? And as opposed to the zoning standards, which would permit manufactured homes in a single family community. The city's zoning standards are separate from what parties are able to regulate to some extent in private contract through HOA. I'm not aware and certainly something we can look into if there are regulations on what HOAs can do for single family homes. I know in recent years, state law has changed with respect to what HOAs can do to ADUs. So that's something that we can look into, but off the top of my head, I'm not aware that there is a restriction on HOUs from prohibiting this type of housing product, or sorry, HOAs from prohibiting this type of housing product in a community where the HOA applies.
And just to add to that, I agree with Zach. I think what we're really, the HOAs can still impose their particular standards. What we're really talking about is those areas of our city that don't necessarily have an HOA, perhaps, for example, areas west of us that are existing single family neighborhoods, and there's vacant lots within them, and this would allow for the utilization of a manufactured home. This is consistent with the city's adopted housing element, which does promote housing product diversity, so that we can provide different types of housing, not just wood built, but as an example, a manufactured home. So I think Zach's going to do some research, it sounds like, to confirm that, but hopefully we're answering your question, Commissioner.
So Zach, just to make sure we're both going to answer my real question. If this is the city standard, can an HOA have a standard and have it supersede the city? No. So if the HOA says, nope, no manufactured homes in this development, I understand if there's a vacant lot in an ungated neighborhood, they can build whatever pretty much they want within the rules of the quality of the build, right? But can an HOA set those regulations?
Yeah, the HOA would be able to regulate. You'd have to build something that complies with whatever the HOA's regulations, covenants are to be accepted by that HOA. I know some HOAs have their own design review processes, things like that. This type of product could foreseeably trigger some of those issues within their HOA, and then the HOA would that would be a matter for them to deal with.
Yeah,
okay, so
civil matter at that point. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the HOA would not be, their hands would not be tied by the city's policy.
And Commission, it is important to note, and Zach referenced it earlier, but the city does not get involved in the implementation of HOA rules. Particularly, they're normally in the covenant codes and restrictions that HOAs adopt. So the city, whether the city zoning allows it or not, at the end of the day, if the HOA has limitations on type of housing, architectural design, things like that, that is for the HOA to implement. So
Okay.
as Zach said, if the HOA did not allow for manufactured homes, then that would be their requirement. This language would be applicable in the city in other instances. I think Zach's going to jump in on me.
Yeah, no, just for clarification, the HOA can be in some situations can be more strict, but they can't be, for example, more permissive than what the city zoning code would allow. So, for example, the HOA can't allow some type of housing product that would be otherwise be prohibited by the city's zoning code, but the opposite is not true.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. Okay.
And I, just for the record, Zach did mention accessory dwelling units. There's been changes to state legislation, however, where HOAs cannot prohibit accessory dwelling units. And that's something just to be mindful of. It doesn't apply in this instance, but that's just for the record, since that was referenced.
Okay.
I have
Commissioner, other questions or thoughts?
quick question on, so is there going to be a specific zoning that would allow for manufactured mobile home park, or is it going to be allowed in anything that's zoned for residential?
We will have a specific zone designation that was reviewed under Article 2, but this is that would be a mobile home park. Typically, was that zoning designation would apply to. This would be individual lots, Commissioner. So again, using an example, some of the areas to the west of us that are not within gated communities are your more typical single-family non-gated communities. A vacant lot in there. Potentially, this language could apply to that vacant lot if it was adopted.
As long as it's a 10 acre minimum, then it would be able to accommodate a mobile home park if it's zoned appropriately. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, Roger, did you have anything else that you wanted to go back to, you said?
I will just quickly wrap up, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. After tonight's meeting, Ramey and Associates will be back to talk about the zone and citywide regulations, Article 3 on April 27th. And then as Kevin was talking about permits and procedures, Article 6 will be coming up in May 25th. And then as you can see on the slide here, City Council Planning Commission hearings are in May and July, hopefully with a final adopt code in July and August.
And Chair, I want to add
members of the commission,
information if I can.
Yeah, please.
So a little preview. On April 27th, you will actually be talking about cannabis because we are bringing forward, as the commission may be aware, the council has been talking about the potential allowance of cannabis in the city. And those conversations have progressed where we've gotten direction from the council at the staff level to develop a number of regulatory approaches. One is Chapter 123 that was referenced earlier, and that would be the operational standards and guidelines for cannabis activity. However, there is a zoning code component to this in terms of where those cannabis uses might be allowed. And so we will be asking the commission to conduct a public hearing. It's a very small change to the zoning code in the grand scheme of things, but we will be asking you to conduct a public hearing on April 27th. The council has asked that this be brought forward as quickly as possible. And so on April 27th, we've already noticed for it, and we'll be bringing to you a proposed modification to the zoning code that would consider the allowance of cannabis activity, cannabis retail and retail storefront and non-retail storefront activity. And we'll get into that at a future date. So just keep that in mind. Right now, this section is mimicking the current code, which is a prohibition, but we're going to be engaging in a topical conversation in terms of you making a potential recommendation to council on this.
Outstanding. Thank you for the heads up.
And Chair, if I might suggest just checking with Ms. Castillo to see if there's been anyone who's requested to submit public comment on item 4.3 before wrapping the item up or having any other discussion on the item.
Yeah, certainly. Vanessa, anyone online or anyone in chambers who would like to comment?
There are none.
Okay, being that there are none, we'll go ahead and adjourn that project consultation, the study session item. If there are no further commissioner comments in general, we can adjourn. Commissioner,
I have some. So this is basically for staff. So the last couple of meetings that we've had on the zoning and the building code, et cetera, we have been talking about creating very specific rules. And as long as the rules are followed, then they don't have to come before Planning Commission. At least they're trying to simplify and streamline everything. I've had conversations with some other planners and other cities and how are they doing it. And they all seem to be maintaining design review with the Planning Commission. So I don't expect you to have an answer for me now, but I would like to have a conversation with staff, either at a study session or one-on-one or whatever we end up doing, about how we can implement some of these streamlining features, but still maintain the design review process, so that the Planning Commission can really be aware of what is being built within our city, what it's going to look like, where it's going to sit, not just that it meets the minimum standards. So that's one of my concerns. So I just wanted to bring that up and let you know that I've been reaching out to different folks trying to get ideas and recommendations. Again, I'm not a planner. So I just wanted to let you know that I am going to be requesting that, or I am requesting.
Commissioner, that's a great question, and it is certainly a topic of conversation, particularly when we get to Article 6, which is the permits and procedures. I'll put a question in your head, not for topical conversation because this wasn't agendized, but one of the thought process behind whether there should be straight everything going to Planning Commission for design review or a bifurcation between administrative or staff level and Planning Commission is whether a building that is 5,000 square feet, and you've seen a couple of those in the past, should be treated the same in terms of processing as a 50,000 square foot building, which may be more impactful. So as we go into that conversation, just to put into your respective heads, we're kind of looking at this from a reasonableness standpoint, at least at the staff level. Is it reasonable to expect a person who's doing a 5,000 square foot building to go through the same extensive public hearing process as a person doing a 50,000 square foot building? And so there's a cost to that. There's a time to that. You will be adopting more, as you pointed out, Commissioner Franz, more detailed design standards than you currently have available to you that may offset some of the concerns that the commission has about design. But that's a good topic to highlight tonight, and that's something that we can certainly get into at the permits and procedures stage, or if the commission wants to get into it sooner than that, we certainly can, at least at a philosophical level, but we would have to agendize that.
Okay, whatever the chair or the commission wants to do, I just think it's important that we kind of understand where we're all coming from before we start to put all these rules and regulations into place. So it might be better to kind of hash it out before you complete section 6 or article 6.
So just if procedurally, Chair, if you have 3 members present, you can't vote obviously, but if there's consensus that the 3 members present wanted to have this as a topic of conversation, we could put it on as a topic of conversation on a near-term agenda, and it wouldn't be under the well, it would be kind of an element of the Unified Development Code conversation, but it would be more kind of I think, an overview of maybe more of a philosophical conversation about what the commission's thoughts are. The example I just gave as whether or not you think that is an appropriate way to look at things or not. So we would need to agendize it, and we could either do that soon. We will have a little bit of a lull before we get to Article 6 after the next meeting. So we could certainly do that in May at your May meeting because the consultant team is going to need a little bit more time to put together Article 6. So we could certainly do that, and maybe that would be timely because before the Article 6 comes to you for your review, you would have given some input and thoughts that can be incorporated into what they present to you.
Yeah, certainly. I noticed there was that little gap between Article 3 and Article 6. So maybe if we can put that on the agenda as a topic for discussion before we review Article 6, I agree that would be a good idea. Commissioner Valdez?
Yes, I agree as well.
Okay, so direction I received, Chair, is we will agendize this at the first meeting in May, if that's appropriate. And yes, then at that time, what we will do is probably, for lack of a better word, I keep saying philosophical conversation, but it's really in terms of the commission's perspective on the appropriate level of a review for different either types or sizes of projects, and whether the commission wants to retain or propose to council to retain authority to review all levels of projects, or whether the commission wants to cede some of that authority to the staff. And so that'll be kind of the, I guess, for lack of a word, the philosophical conversation we'll have.
Sounds good.
Does that sound what the 3 members are expecting?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Thank you everyone for your presentations tonight. We will adjourn this planning meeting to the next planning meeting scheduled for April 27th, 2022. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.